To our next session, a reflection of life, literature, and politics. Discussing this will be Nayantara Sagal, Ritu Menon, and Geeta Doctor. Over to you.
I have to apologize for my sexy morning voice. I'm afraid it's entirely due to the bogi and pongal. But a very happy pongal nevertheless. I'm absolutely delighted to be... I thought somebody was going to introduce us. Where's the introducer? Well, I'll then say that both my panelists are so famous they don't need an introduction. Yes, please give it. I'm delighted to welcome two extraordinarily gifted and award-winning writers. It's also rare to share a platform with a biographer and her subject. I hope I didn't have to call you a victim, because, because it's a wonderful book. And so a very warm welcome to you, Ritu Menon. We know you as an exceptional editor of Kali for Women that showcased women's issues for many years, and now as a biographer of one of the most brilliant and consistently thought-provoking personalities of post-independent India, Nayantara Sagal. Please. I had hoped that they would put a photograph of her first book, the book that absolutely delighted me when I read it when I was about 10 or 11. And I think it introduced me to all the excitement of what it meant to be growing up before independence. It was so thrilling. And I think I could ask you to tell us why you called it Prison and Chocolate Cake.
I didn't. The title was suggested by my publisher.
Oh. Because the story that I heard, and I don't know if it's your publisher who said this, that it was your grandmother.
No.
No? And she said, well, your grandfather's
my
gone to jail.
grandmother had died long before that. So.
And let's have chocolate cake because he's in jail. So that's not a true story.
No, that's not a true story, but the idea behind it was that in my childhood I was taught that going to prison was a privilege. It was not something to be sad about. And when my father was first arrested, I must have been 2 years old or 3 years old, and my mother did not want it to be an unhappy experience for me and my sisters, and so she had chocolate cake made for tea so that we would associate my father going to prison with something good, make a happy occasion of it.
Okay.
But your publisher must have known this little incident.
Because I narrate it in the book, yes.
So to be in the presence of somebody like Nayantara Sagal is to be in touch with a reminder of what it means to be a writer, an Indian, and a woman of extraordinary courage and integrity. To call her a legend, as I'm sort of tempted, would be to make her into a kind of monument, even a fossil. And it was Pandit Nehru who said that during my lifetime, I don't want any statues or fossils. And the last thing you would ever think of when looking and reading Nayantara Sagal, that she would want to be fossilized. Because she's this wonderfully living example of a writer. And just half an hour back, you would have heard how it's time that we as writers or thinking people got together and had an association. Of course, it's also true that none of these associations of writers and creative people actually work, because everyone is so individualistic, and that is as should be. But we do have pen. I mean, surely that should be enough of a fora.
I don't think so. No. because PEN, of course, is an international organization and we should have it. But in view of the fact that Murugan has been silenced and the nation has not stood up in his defense, it does seem to me I would like to see the formation of a common platform where writers, artists, publishers in India could speak with one voice when such things happen, and that we rise up against this kind of intimidation and bullying that is going on today. So.
But Nayanthara, hasn't it been going on right from the beginning? I remember Aubrey Menon's 9 Hours to Rama was the first book to be proscribed by the government, and not many writers came up and said, we shouldn't do this. It seems to be a feature of our literary life.
Well, that makes it all the more important for us to put a stop to it.
Change.
And I think that now there's a definite trend which we can't ignore. More and more writers are being threatened. Artists have been, their paintings have been vandalized, yes. And, well, worse things. Hindu women are being told to bear 4 children and all the rest of that nonsense that is going on. So, you know, we have to put a stop to it, and only concerned citizens can do that.
Would you like to add to that, Ritu?
You know, I think that there is a point, and actually you're right, it has been going on for a very long time. It's not that we haven't had writers, artists, painters, filmmakers being prevented from presenting uncomfortable reality or uncomfortable truths. That has been going on for a very long time, and voices have been raised, maybe not in one voice, but they have been raised. But what's happening now, and what I think Nayanthara is referring to, is the fact that it is concerted, it is widespread, and it is very, very Hindu. There is a Hindutva aspect to this, which I think we cannot ignore. And that is something that needs to be countered, I think, in unequivocal terms. As writers, as publishers, as public intellectuals, as readers, as anybody who's concerned with what with how we want to represent ourselves and how we wish to be as a people. I think that's very critical.
A general outline that was recommended by the organizers suggests that we focus on life, literature, and politics. Obviously, this is a take from your latest book, The Political Imagination, the latest volume of essays and speeches, which has these words in the subtitle. And it also forms a link to your book, Ritu, that also includes literature, politics, and life, as the biography of Sehgal indicates. In both these books, there is an engagement with issues that go beyond the personal and the everyday. The personal is political, as has been mentioned many times, but in your work, have you made the political personal?
Would you repeat your last sentence? In my work?
You know, when feminist writers, they always say the personal is political.
Yes, yes.
But seeing the body of your work, right from Prison and Chocolate Cake, the one book that I really remember, and all the subsequent books, have you made the political personal?
Let's say that there's no difference in my life between the political and the personal. Because politics was not something out there. It was something that intimately connected us in the home, influenced us and made our lives what they were. because I belonged to a political family. My parents were involved in going to jail. There were long separations from them and so on. And everything that happened in the country influenced what was going on domestically. So that there was no difference in my life between the political and the personal. So it came naturally to me when I began to write that politics was my material. Mm-hmm. And it just became the background of my novels.
Uh-huh.
And
even in your novels?
Especially in my novels, especially. All my novels are political.
Okay.
Everything that happens in them is connected with the atmosphere of the country at the time. Because
Yes.
I think what I was writing about was the making of modern India.
Yes.
And every novel connects with an event or an atmosphere of the time that it was being written.
Obviously, that's the feeling we got reading your books. But reading Ritu, I feel that you get a complete... I know that you haven't read Ritu's book.
I haven't.
Do you feel very hurt about that, Ritu?
No, actually, I don't at all feel hurt. I think it's, I'm not sure whether this is a fact or not, but I actually don't know whether subjects of biographies read their biographies. Why would they? I mean, why would Nayanthara want to read about her life? She's lived it. Do you see what I'm saying? There is a way by which, it's something that I think Eleanor said a little earlier, that she had nothing to do with the screenplay or the production of her first novel because she'd left it behind. It was over. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was over for her.
Yes.
And similarly, I do think that there is a way by which the subject of a biography really isn't terribly interested in what a biographer has to say about them. There seems to me to, let's say, if someone were to write a book about me, I don't think I'd bother reading it.
Really?
Yes, really. And I don't think that this is something facetious. I think that there is a way by which you don't need to read what someone else has made of your life. It might be very interesting to do so. Mm-hmm. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that you may not get another perspective, just as I dare say Eleanor will probably see her film very differently from what the book is. But it's another work. It's another book. It's another take, if you like, on a life. Okay. And you may or may not be interested in what that person, or curious about how that person is representing you. I mean, that's the only way I can sort of comment on that.
I have to say that I never understood why anybody would want to write about my life. Ritu had asked me over the years, why didn't I write my autobiography? And I said I was never going to do that. So then she finally said, would it be all right with you if I wrote your biography? And I said, yes, but why would you want to?
But haven't you been writing about your life? You've said so just
I've
15
written
minutes.
2 autobiographical books, not autobiographies.
Yes.
Prison and Chocolate Cake was the first, yes.
Yes. Because reading Ritu's wonderful book, I would recommend it, actually.
What I wanted to add to a question that you asked Nayanthara about personal and political, I think what's really very unusual in her work is not, of course, that there was no separation in her life between the personal and the political. That, I think, is clear. But that the personal, the political, and the literary are completely intertwined.
Absolutely.
But in a way that is sustained and consistent, meaning it isn't the odd novel or the odd political column or even the autobiography, which has that as its spine, but that political literary thread is very closely intertwined with the personal. And, I would just extend what she said to say that the personal was not simply the intimate personal family life,
Yes.
which is what she was referring to when she spoke about Prison and Chocolate
Yes.
Cake, but her own life as well. That everything that happened in her personal experience, post-independence, post the freedom struggle, post her marriage, post, the domesticity that she found herself in, was also then became the political material. Politics is not simply state and citizen, ruler and ruled, but of course gender relations, men and women,
Yes.
parents and children, the entire complex of what we call relations of power, in
Yes.
whichever way they manifest. That's actually what was the most interesting thing about wanting to write your life, about wanting to write about it. After all, how would one have written a biography of somebody who's written everything already about her life?
Yes.
In her autobiographies, in her novels, in her political columns. So how do you then write that life if it's already been written by her?
Well, to hark back to the Ritu's insights, if I might say so, since you saw your life in this political manner, what I found reading Ritu, she gives us the human pain. And the idea that here you are, this really beautiful person, as appeared in that first cover. I think it's a Cartier-Bresson photograph that you had on the...
Yes, that was taken
when you were in
in
America.
college,
Yes,
when I was in
yes.
college, yes.
Yes, because I've seen the series of photographs you've taken of you and your sister. And they're really beautiful, exquisite photographs. And you think that this person has a wonderful, enchanted life. And when you read Ritu, it's not that you want to look for the pain, but you also see the struggle. And that is maybe something you don't tell us in your novels. But Ritu has managed to uncover some of that. It makes you feel that, yes, we're all the same. We can also maybe identify with this.
Yes, I think what writing does is to make one step out of family and to step out of country even. At least that's what it did for me. Because both in my fiction and non-fiction, I came up against situations which I could not support, which were then happening in the country, and indeed happening within my family when my cousin was Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, during the emergency. I had to step out and fight those situations because my whole upbringing had taught me to do so. And when people asked me at the time, how can you go against your family? And I said, I am defending what my family stands for.
Yes.
I am defending Jawaharlal Nehru. And Indira Gandhi is the one who has gone against her family.
Yes.
So
That required tremendous courage, not to mention taking
it was
risks.
very, very painful for me, partly because during the emergency and even before I faced very difficult situation of not being able to earn a living.
Yes.
And-
After 15 years of writing for the Sunday Standard, suddenly it was stopped.
All political writing was stopped that didn't agree
Yes.
with the government in power. And not only that, but a film project which had been taken up was dropped because the woman who's going to make the film, based on my novel This Time of Mourning, suddenly realized it might be very dangerous for her to do so because she didn't want to be associated with me anymore. And a novel I had just written and contracted for, the publisher dropped it because he was afraid to be associated with me. That kind of thing was going on, and it was really, really very hard for me to make a living. So it was a difficult and painful time, but that was what I felt I had to do.
I think you tell Ritu, I spoke out against my cousin because she is my cousin, or she was.
It was important to me that the government headed by her, should not be doing what it was doing at the time. So these are very difficult situations, but I'm not a person who's ever believed in my country, right or wrong. When the country goes wrong, it's its citizens who have to put it right. I've never believed in my family, right or wrong.
Thank you. And yet, I think in portions of your write-up, or speaking with Ritu, you begin to show some regret. You feel, maybe should have been a little more diplomatic, not criticized her so openly. Is that a sort of afterthought?
Not that I should have been more diplomatic, but that I could have been less confrontational.
Right.
You know, that I could have put things a little differently. I didn't regret anything I had written or said, but that one does, in the passion of the moment, you know, speak sort of more frankly than perhaps one would if one sat back and thought about it a little and then put it a little differently. Yeah.
Because finally, not that I'm an apologist for Indira Gandhi, she too was very isolated. And maybe you could have been that one person who might have been able to reach out to her.
Absolutely, I do believe that. I loved her dearly, and she loved me. I was her favorite cousin. She was much older. She was 10 years my senior and had always spoiled me as a child. And we got along extremely well. And therefore, it was all the more difficult and painful for me to oppose her when the time came. And therefore, I had these second thoughts much later, looking back on what I had done at the time.
Okay. What I admire you, Ritu, is even listening to this idea that maybe she could have been a little less vehement. You haven't sat in judgment on this issue. And I don't know if I'm reading too much in it, but your relationship with Indira Gandhi was one of those very crucial ones for her, maybe not for you.
No, this is what power does to people. She changed once she came to power, and this whole business of dynastic succession was started by her. Nehru was not a dynast. He didn't even choose a successor.
Yes.
His party chose his successor. So she changed in these ways once she came to power. And then, well, what can I say? I mean, she became a different person. And she couldn't tolerate opposition, especially from her own kith and kin. So she was not prepared to stop looking after her children and go into politics. We must give her a ticket to Parliament. And Mamu said, he said to me, you want to write? Write. And I had no desire to do anything else.
Okay.
So.
You know, I
Would
just
you like
wanted
to add
to
to
say, I just wanted to say one thing about this personal political thing. It's a very painful situation to be in. It's not many people who can live their politics. And
Yes.
it's not many people who can live their personal lives politically.
Yes.
It's a very painful situation to be in. And I think that the pain that you're referring to in this life, and
Yes.
perhaps also in the biography, although it was never part of my intention
Yes.
to make it into a pain-filled document,
Right.
is that the condition itself is predicated on a certain painful recognition of who you are and what you want to be.
Okay.
Which is why most people keep politics out of their writing. How often have we heard this? I'm not a political writer. How often have we heard, I'm a feminist, but? How often have we heard, let's not bring politics into the picture? It's precisely because it is such a painful thing to do, because it entails that you are responsible then for what you write, for your convictions, for how you live. And I think that's the, if I might say so,
Yes, yes.
you're having put the cat among the pigeons, so to speak, is that it was Indira Gandhi's
Insecurity.
intention to separate the personal from the political
Yes.
in the intimate sense, in the familial sense, that actually was what, in a way, incensed her about her cousin's, Nayantara's, political commentary. Because it was not simply a political commentary on what was happening in the country, it was a political comment on a personal relationship as that was political. The relationship between the two of them could never be simply personal. This is the interesting thing that I think we miss.
Okay.
The relationship between Nayanthara and Indira Gandhi could never remain only personal,
Okay.
which is what Mrs. Gandhi might have wanted.
Because once you started writing your columns, you had got political.
That's right, yes.
And she must have felt threatened by that. We can't
You see,
imagine what happened.
I think when I began to write political columns, she was in a very insecure situation personally. She was insecure in her party at the time. She was fighting the right wing of her party. She was very anxious that the party not go back on the socialist path. All of that was going
Yes.
on. And I think all of that accounted for her political insecurity at the time and made her especially vulnerable to any kind of opposition.
Yes. In this current climate of intimidation and curtailing of freedoms worldwide, as a new dark age descends upon us, we might like to ask, what role do artists, writers, and creative persons of all stripes and shades need to address? Is this a collective responsibility or an individual one?
Well, look, the other day, when the savage attack took place in France, Paris, 1 million or more people marched in Paris.
Yes,
And that included people from outside France also.
yes.
If that can happen there, why can't it happen here? Why can we not unite collectively to prevent these terrible attacks that are going on and on against writers, against artists, against women? Why can't we do it?
So that's a question for all of you to ask. Why can't we do that? We'll wait till then. We'll wait for the question and now. Please hold your horses. Even if you don't have a horse. The conquest of fear, has been a leitmotif in your work. It recurs again and again. Fear set free. Pandit Nehru, in writing about Gandhiji, had said, "The essence of his teaching is fearlessness and truth, and action allied to these, always keeping in mind the welfare of the masses." You have faced imminent arrest during the emergency period and in your personal life, as Ritu has said. Today, when we see these things on television, that fear becomes our fear. Because, as Polly Toynbee said in the Hindu the other day, what the terrorists are doing is to make us all into citizens of fear of the unnamed. When we see beheadings on television, the terror attacks, what can we as individuals do? Is it possible to conquer fear through words?
We can speak out. We can stand up and be counted. And I think the time has come to do just that.
Finally, this is a very romantic question. You always had, thank you, you've always had this instinct for beauty. Even in one of the darkest moments when you had left, the character had left her husband, I remember you went and bought a piece of art, a beautiful piece of glass. And I don't know if you remember this particular book. And these are the sort of touchstones which keep you sane, just like the rose that we associate with Pandit Nehru. So is there something to be said about this quest for beauty? And of course, it's also there in your writing. The beauty of your writing, the elegance of Ritu's rewriting of your life, representation. Can beauty be the touchstone to conquer this thing we call fear?
No.
I was hoping you'd say yes.
Beauty has its place in life, no question about that. But I think now what we have to exert is power. And we have to speak powerfully in support of the things we believe in, the idea of India which we believe in, before it is destroyed before our eyes.
Would you like to add to that, Ritu?
I can only endorse it, but I just hope that there is a sense by which maybe at this festival, because it is the Hindu, because it is in Madras, in Chennai, that we can in some way come out with a very powerful statement on Perumal Murugan. I mean, not just because...
That's what I said at the start, yes.
I think the saddest day, at least for me, as someone engaged with all these, and I dare say for many of us, was his Facebook post declaring his death as a writer. I mean, it was heartbreaking to read something like that. And to think that a person can be driven to repudiate themselves in that fashion is shocking and extremely disturbing. I think we really should, in this festival, make a statement about it. And I think we should do it collectively, and as Nayantara says, in one voice, but in a powerful voice that will communicate itself, and maybe in some way, you know, allow him to be the writer he would like to be.
So may I just have the final word? When I asked you about beauty, it's in the Keatsian sense. Beauty is truth, and truth is beauty. And I think in your work, you have tried to isolate your truth. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ritu. Any questions? I mean, I know there are lots of horses here.
Hi, my question is to Ms. Nayantara Sehgal. Asking an author which is their favorite work is like asking a parent which is their favorite child. However, I'd like to ask you, out of all your works, which is your favorite book?
Some of my works I don't like at all. I would rewrite them today. But yes, I think my favorites are Rich Like Us and Mistaken Identity. 2 novels.
There's just one more question. Who's the lucky person for the one more question?
Ma'am,
okay, one. I like the ladies asking questions.
I want to know why, can we actually read out a passage from Murugan's book here? And why are Tamil writers not called here and to read their English translations at least in this festival?
That's a question
she
for the
can't
organizers.
I don't think Nayantara is in the position to answer that.
No.
Maybe you've got to ask the Tamil writers. I'm sure they're going to be speaking later. But thank you for your question. Any more questions will be taken outside. I'm sorry we have to stop. Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience. And thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ritu.
Thank you.